All right, we are live. Welcome to the the Avatar Slang Podcast, your go-to destination for deep dives into the realm of fiction and all things nerdy. And I'm joined by my man Dan Von Doom.
Hey, what's going on?
So, how you been lately?
Lately, been pretty good.
Good, good.
Yeah, it's been a overall temperate winter, which feels odd to say considering the double snowfall that we had just recently. But I feel like this one, it's kept warmer than a lot of recent years that I can think of.
I think I agree, but then I feel like I say that probably every year because I wear a guest jacket and I'm running pretty hot when I wear it. Like
Yeah,
it's not cold enough to justify it. It's not like a big parka. It's just like one of those bubble coats.
yeah, I have a big winter coat that I really like wearing, and it's a crapshoot. In January, it's a crapshoot. Waking up like, oh, do I wear this or do I just wear my hoodie and leather jacket?
And you drive, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, so that makes it even more complicated.
yes, absolutely.
But yeah, I'm just gonna introduce you to the audience. So I met Dan at Comic Con. Believe it or not, it's been like 6 years. About
More than that. So given the costume that I would have been wearing at that convention, that's yeah, though that's closer to 7 years at this point.
I
At
also think I
a
met.
convention that doesn't even exist anymore. That convention folded.
It changed its name or it just folded completely.
Folded completely. It turns out the dude that ran it is no bueno. He
Oh,
like during COVID, they he like he couldn't cancel the convention for legal reasons, which
mhm.
happened to a bunch of people. But what a bunch of people didn't do that this dude did was he sold tickets anyway. Um, and then when he was legally able to cancel the convention, when like safety protocols allowed, he did so. Gave nobody refunds, took everybody's money, and ran. And now he's legally not allowed to run a convention in the state of Pennsylvania ever again.
So what was that? Was that Wizard World?
That was great, Philly.
Oh, I didn't even realize that. It was that long ago. I don't even remember which one I went to.
Yeah.
So okay.
The Wizard World, I guess, doesn't technically exist anymore either. Though that did just change the name. That's Fan Expo.
Okay, got you. Okay, that's probably where I thought I was at. And see, too long. So basically, after this, we gotta make time to see each other more often. Then,
I would love that. That'd be rad.
okay. So, and it turns out we live in the same county now.
Yeah, yeah. You're 15 minutes from me.
Okay, because when I first met you, I was living in a part of Philly I'm not even from.
Yeah,
I was in Germantown.
yeah, yes, yeah. No, I do remember that now. And odd the odd thing, right?
Mhm.
Life is weird. Is until like 2, maybe 1 years before I met you, I was living in Germantown on
Really?
yeah, Seymour.
Oh snap.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's not far from where I was at. I don't remember exactly how far, but I drove past that street a lot. I would have to ask my wife how far we were from that, or I'll check the map later.
Yeah, it's a small world.
Yeah, it is. And but yeah, let's get into the fictional nerd stuff.
Absolutely.
So one thing that always stuck out about you is, first of all, you liking Doctor Doom that much, that stuck out. Like,
Doom Doom's a hell of a character. He's an entire cornerstone of Marvel's canon and history by this point, and I truly feel um, that as important as characters like the Avengers and the X-Men and the Fantastic Four and so on and so forth are to Marvel, so too are the villains, the antagonists. Obviously, you have your Magnetos, your Thanoses, your Apocalypses. Um, but Doom always stood out to me because he is a villain, he is an antagonist, but he's not at his core really truly
evil.
evil or black-hearted. He acts in
Mhm.
his own self-interest, and in the interest of those that he perceives can be beneficial to him. But he's a very layered and complex character who isn't above being moved. He isn't above opening his heart, having his heart touched and moved and swayed by outside forces and people. And that's why he's had not just, minions, people who have worked for him or people who he's gotten along or aligned causes with over the years. And I mean, there's been a whole array of those, but actual friends, allies, counterparts, people who have helped him fight against the entire world when he's wanted or needed to. And this quote comes from a really off the wall source.
Okay.
But it's one I've always been a fan of. It's from John Dolmayan, who is the drummer for the band System of a Down.
Okay.
And he, while System was on hiatus.
What's the name of the band?
What's up?
What's the name of the band again?
System of a Down. They're an alternative metal band from the late 90s. They started, they started in the early to mid 90s, but they got rolling in the late 90s and continued on through the 2000s. When they were on hiatus, he started an online comic book shop called Torpedo Comics, and he's a huge comic book fan. And he said about Dr. Doom, because Dr. Doom is one of his favorites as well, that Doom's not really evil. He just really wants you to think that he is.
Huh.
And
about that way.
Don't get it twisted. He's done some really messed up stuff, but not never for the sake of doing it, never for a shallow reason. There's always layers and plans and processes behind everything that Doom does. And it's always been fascinating to me, especially the dynamic and dichotomy between him and Reed Richards, because Reed Richards is a guy who everybody on the surface level thinks is super nice and cool and heroic and awesome, who is actually a total dick.
Can I stop you there real quick?
Yeah.
So I was listening to not listening. I was reading Civil War. I got it somewhere near me, but I'm not going to wait for camera for it. And I realized that because I didn't read it originally. I didn't have the money to keep buying comics, so I used to either read them online or I get the recaps online.
Oh, absolutely.
So, and sometimes I just felt too far behind and I was intimidated. I'll be honest. So I realized that the cartoon version, when I say cartoon, like the animated version, that's the nice guy.
Yeah.
That's the idealistic version of Reed Richards. But the one in the comics, he's a jackass.
And he has been throughout his publication history.
Yeah.
I thought it was really on one level, I thought it was really brave of Marvel to, even when they did, like in the 60s and 70s, take a stab against the patriarchy by portraying Reed as like the typical conservative head of a nuclear family who is narcissistic and self-absorbed and thinks he's the shit, and everyone else, even the people around him who he claims to care about, can go pound sand. And there's a meme that got circulated around Reddit and the internet recently that I thought illustrated the point really well, where it was like, this was the beginning of Reed Richards' characteristic of being unable to read a room, where in the original comics, when the Fantastic Four got their powers and they're talking about, what the wave from the negative zone did to each of them. And it got around to Ben Grimm, and he was like, I've become just what Sue called me. I'm a thing. And
I remember that panel.
then it gets to Reed, and he's like, I'll call myself Mr. Fantastic. Really, dude?
Yeah, right. It's like your friend's going through it and just like, I got this cool name.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
So to
before you move on, can I ask you a quick question?
Oh, absolutely.
Is he on the? Do you think he's on the spectrum?
I do, but I think it goes deeper than that.
Okay.
I have an extensive background, both professional and personal, with people on the spectrum. I used to be an esports coach at a school that caters specifically to kids on the spectrum. And
we might be cousins because I was working autistic support last year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
But so yes, Reed, I do think is on the spectrum, but I think it's not.
That's
It's
not
not.
the only reason for all he. It's not
That's
the main reason
certainly
for his
a reason.
assholeness.
That's certainly a reason, a valid reason for his struggles with emotional connection and emotional regulation.
Mhm.
But he's also abusive.
Yeah, that spectrum doesn't mean that. Yeah.
Like in a really dirty, literal way, like more than Hawkeye was, like more than Hank Pym was. Reed has been shown to hit Sue more than one occasion. He's been really misogynistic towards her. When he learns that their child Franklin was developing god level powers that he couldn't control, his solution was to shoot a beam at Franklin that would erase his brain cell function.
As a dad?
Yeah. Yeah, that is smart. Supposed smartest dude in the universe couldn't come up with a better solution than that. And
he just settled on the first. What?
Yeah.
Okay.
And there's way more than that besides, but to craft a compelling antithesis to Reed Richards, to give Reed Richards super dick wrapped up in a layer of nice shiny smiles and PR, a proper villain, they had to flip the script and do the opposite. A guy that on the outside everybody thinks of as some evil monster, and on the inside, he takes care of the Latverian citizens. They all lead austere lives, but they're all employed. Latveria has no unemployment. Their crime rate's virtually nil. They all have their needs met and are taken care of, but they all also, by law, are required to praise Doom in public.
So, question: are they socialists?
Yes.
Are they also? So they're a liberal nightmare and a conservative nightmare all at once?
I struggle to say liberal nightmare, because liberal as it
left
is
wing, I'll say left
yeah,
wing.
leftist would be better.
Yes.
I think for that. Doom is like Doom is the functional execution of what socialism could do for a people that otherwise wouldn't be able to sustain themselves on their given resources and economy. And Reed Richards is, like opposite end of the parabolic curve. Like the functional peak execution of conservatism. Only I matter, screw everybody else.
Okay, I got a question, because I feel like since Reed Richards and Dr. Doom have history that spans, we're at year 60 basically, right? No, we're past year 60 because they're 60. They came out 61.
Yeah. So okay. Year 63. And another thing, not to cut you off, but another thing I want to
ahead.
Before the question is, there was something that Marvel did back in around 2008, 2012, that era, that I was a huge fan of, where they showed an alternate universe where Reed Richards had died pretty early on in the continuity of the Fantastic Four and all of that. And Sue married Doom. And they had an amazing life together. 2 children. The 4 of them are extremely happy in this alternate universe. And it's like Doom, like all he really needs is somebody to be patient enough to cut through the outer layer and understand,
literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
Oh no, I said that wrong. I meant that's kind of like a what do you call it? Like not a parallel, but it's like he has a hard exterior, literally and figuratively. I meant to say.
Yeah, because of the power armor. But
yeah, exactly. But yeah, my bad. Keep going.
No, all he needs is like a proper partner, like an intimate support, and he will flourish and thrive. And they touched on that again in the Doctor Doom solo book that they did a little bit ago, which that's hilarious and awesome, and you should give it a read, because it illustrates really well like what I mean about Doom not really being evil, but wanting everybody to think that he is, because he finds this alternate universe version of himself that is married to this wonderful woman, and he went on to be like the prime minister of the world, and in this alternate universe world is flourishing and thriving under his worldwide leadership.
Mhm.
And when our Doom finally gets to interact directly with that
Mhm.
Doom, things get really interesting. But I won't spoil anything with
Okay.
specific. It's a really good read.
Okay, so I got a question that can segue kind of into the next topic. Do you think Doctor Doom should be a uniting villain for the MCU?
Absolutely. And he always has been a universe uniting villain for Marvel as a whole.
Absolutely.
When Doom pops off, they don't just, typically anymore. They don't just call Reed and let the Fantastic Four deal with it. Everybody, it's all hands on deck. The Avengers, the X-Men, the Defenders, X-Force, whoever's available. And that's like base level. When at the center of like Secret Invasion or what he was doing as part of Dark Reign and Siege, it gets everybody up to and including the cosmic level people and the Asgardians involved. Um, so
Basically, he's a menace for the because I got friends who are into Marvel, but they don't know as well as us. So to the audience, and also this is going to audio podcasts to the audience. This is going to be how am I trying to say this? Doctor Doom's a menace. To keep it simple, he's a menace.
he definitely is, and in so whereas to contrast, whereas Thanos was like building towards one particular really bad thing that he did with the snap, and that was like his
Mhm.
end goal and what he was working towards in his whole raison d'etre. Doom's got a whole lot cooking and going on at any given time, and it is, as I said earlier, his plans are layered and multitudinal, and I really look forward because we've gotten anything just shy of hard confirmation by this point that they're angling towards Secret Wars, and Doom is the central figure in that storyline, and Kang Dynasty leads directly into that.
Okay.
And if they do Secret Wars in the MCU the way that they did it in print, Doom will be the universal threat, more than Thanos was, more than many things in Marvel since have been. Doom becomes it.
Okay. So I think that's a good place to transition into another topic. So you know a lot about Marvel. You also know a lot about DC, which means naturally you're able to compare Marvel films and DC films.
For better or for worse, I am, yeah.
So
Um,
believe it or not, I see a lot of people who pretend that DC films are better. And
and if DC films truly are able to bring people joy on a level above what Marvel films do, more power to them and good for them. I couldn't disagree with that any harder if I had a mission statement about it, but good for them. Um, like it's an extension of what the key differences between Marvel and DC have always been, and that's that Marvel characters are at their core human. Marvel's very good at character writing, and the stories are character driven. It's not it's not things happen to these people, it's things happen because of these people. People make things happen to each other and about each other, and they react in very real and human ways, and that's why Spider-Man works so well, for example.
so can you use the Spider-Man as an example to be how does that apply to him?
So yes, absolutely. For example, I'll go with the symbiote storyline,
Mhm.
where Peter Parker bonds with the symbiote that eventually becomes known as the Venom symbiote, and
Mhm.
during during that storyline goes through an entire crisis of conscience when he realizes that this thing, although it's making him feel super great and like
Mhm.
really good at his job and gives him endless energy, it's also removing his moral inhibitions and like eroding the whatever barrier there is inside of him that doesn't let him kill people. And he's like, no, I'm not okay with this. And it's not just that, right? I just summarized a whole long storyline in a few sentences there, where he went through an entire, not just conversation with himself, but deliberation about, how do I get rid of this thing? And if I can't, I need to either find a way that it or I can't hurt anybody ever again. Maybe I just stop being Spider-Man. And that led to the events that it led to. But if that had been a DC story,
Mhm.
that it would have been a book or two long, and it would have turned whatever hero had that symbiote into a villain for however long they wanted to ride that concept out, and they just would have been a violent menace that the Justice League had to go then deal with. And that's not a detraction from
A
DC.
lot like Green Lantern.
Yeah.
The Parallax.
Yes,
Parallax is what it is?
Parallax is a great example of what I mean by that. Yeah. And it's not a detraction from DC, because they're two different approaches to storytelling. DC is very plot driven versus character driven. Things happen to the people, and then people do things about those things. But there's definitely been a shift in the zeitgeist with readership and what people enjoy during the last 40 years. What people tend to overlook, a big thing that people tend to overlook about comic book characters and their popularity and prevalence, because DC is still really very good at marketing, is that although Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman have been around since the 20s and have that legacy, DC hasn't outsold Marvel in comic book sales since the 90s. Like by raw hard numbers.
Well, know something funny. Not to say that there used to be this comic book store. I was really young, so I want to say near Ceylon Ave. I don't remember a single DC picture, like decal. I don't remember a single DC decal outside of that joint. Like, I only remember seeing Spider-Man and Venom and like Cable.
That doesn't surprise me, especially because during the 90s, you had Age of Apocalypse going on. You had Maximum Carnage. Like, storylines for Marvel were popping off then. And it's a whole other discussion about how they mismanaged the Avengers and lost a bunch of money and then had to pull themselves out of the fryer by getting in the films. But that Marvel's failure in mismanagement there is not a reflection on DC missing the mark with connecting with their audience and then having to play catch up ever since. So while that's not a detraction against DC in a vacuum, the way that they have executed their films ever since the Nolan versus Batman trilogy is certainly a reflection and an echo of a stubborn stick-to-itiveness to a fault with the way that they like to tell their stories. And it's troubling to me, and it always has been with DC in particular, how they are willing, or they seem especially willing, to sacrifice the elements of their characters that made them likable, connectable, and popular to begin with, in pursuit of shock value and making a big splash with like a plot element or a visual element in their movies. Green Lantern, that movie is a great example of what I mean. Like,
they say it's a great movie.
It does. Oh, don't get me started. Mark Strong was great as Sinestro, and that's
he's great.
And Michael Clark Duncan was great as Kilowog, and that's it. But it doesn't matter that he doesn't look like any sort of Green Lantern that ever has been. Look at the flashy lines on his suit. Aren't those cool? It doesn't matter that we're shoehorning Parallax in here without properly building up or explaining anything having to do with him and making you care, because look, it's a giant space bug. It doesn't matter that Hector Hammond is here at the 11th hour and it isn't going to have any real impact on the outcome of this movie. Look at his giant throbbing head. And DC has loved to try to do that and make quick and dirty money off of shock value elements like that.
So I got a question. So basically, DC went to Hollywood in a way.
Yes,
Okay.
absolutely went to Hollywood, and it's not even really their fault because for longer than Disney has been the parent company of Marvel, Warner Brothers
WB.
is the parent company of DC.
So they've been owned by Hollywood.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
as opposed to Disney, for better or worse, I'm not about to defend Disney here. That's not where I'm going with this. But as opposed to Disney, Warner Brothers is really full of boardrooms with old ass white dudes in suits that don't intend to really care
Mhm.
about these characters or what they're portraying or how they come off as long as the movie makes money. So they'll make calls and cuts and production decisions that make no sense to people like you and me, but they see the bottom line and how they hope it's going to affect that. And that's the motivation behind them pulling those triggers. And that is how we end up with Liam Neeson cast as Ra's al Ghul. That's how we end up with Tom Hardy cast as Bane. That's how
It's just that those movies are so good, it's forgivable.
Second one was for sure.
Well, okay, I'll say to film people or to people that don't know the background of the DC people or care about the background, they consider conceptually.
The first two, sure. I would contend that Dark Knight Rises is a terrible movie, even from a film standpoint.
Okay, I'll give you that, but I'll give you that. What I do want to say to the Hollywood point is that, let me try to put this correctly. Oh, no, I wasn't going to add on. I was going to give you another hot take. There's two things that I think mess with DC, or I'll say WB.
Yeah.
The MCU, the fact that they were able to blend comedy with action the way they did, and the Dark Knight trilogy. I think by putting Christopher Nolan on Man of Steel, they said, "Oh, people want a grounded, but a grounded superhero film." So they made Man of Steel look like this. I don't know how to put it, but do you remember when Man of Steel was being promoted and they had that shot of Superman flying into the atmosphere?
Yeah. So you're right, and I know what you're driving at, and you're right about it. DC took the wrong lessons from Frank Miller and his run on Batman, and
That's Dark Knight. He did the Dark Knight books, right?
he did Batman Year One, Dark Knight Returns, and a few other things. But
to the audience, the Dark Knight movies kind of based on that. No, Returns is kind of based on that, right?
Dark Knight Rises is very,
That's what I meant.
very,
Rises.
And I use this
Loosely.
word. I use this word like a punch in the gut to myself. It's very loosely based,
super loose
on Dark Knight Returns, but they took the wrong lessons from Frank Miller's Batman. They completely ignored all of the groundbreaking character work that he was like laying out for Batman and everybody associated, and we're just like, yeah, noir, dark, gritty. We'll roll with that. And that
I think I know.
That sent everything that came after down a spiral of, oh, well, it worked for the Dark Knight trilogy. Everybody really liked that. Let's do that with everything now. And not only did it send DC down that path, because Man of Steel was needlessly dark and gritty. Not that movie doesn't have merit. There's things to like about it, but it's
Which
not.
movie? I lost my sound for a second. Say that again. Which movie?
Oh, no,
talk about?
no worries. Not that Man of Steel is an absolutely meritless movie. There's things to like about it, but on the whole, it is not a good Superman film. But not only did it send them down the path of making everything grim, dark, and gritty and noir, no matter if it suited the source material or not, but they also started throwing whatever they could at the wall to see what stuck. Because if it worked for Batman with the Dark Knight movie trilogy, maybe it could work for something else. And by the time they got around to learning what really works for the MCU and how it's able to connect with audiences and engage and endear and entertain people, they were really only able to execute it inside of one film. And I'll die on this hill. I'll bring it up to the day I die. Shazam, in my opinion, is the best movie that DC has done. Like, in my opinion, in my
So like
honest
DCEU, or you mean DC overall?
opinion, ever, but
Oh
especially
man,
in the DCEU.
that's a hot
Shazam,
take. So you got it over Dark Knight?
Shaz- and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
Shazam is the best Marvel movie DC's ever made. They nailed the MCU formula in it.
They
It's
did. You're not. Yeah.
it's endearing. It's funny. It loses none of the characterization of the source material. Everything was on point. The characters were exactly who they needed to be, and they kept it succinct. And nothing got lost in the shuffle. And it was a difficult balancing act.
All right. Let me
The
read
first,
this question real quick to the audio listeners. Test Films from YouTube said, "What did he think of the first Wonder Woman?"
the first Wonder Woman movie was good. In my opinion, was not great, but it benefited from contrast because everything that DC had done up to that point, not including The Dark Knight, which I'll get to in a bit, but everything else that DC had done up to that point was so god awful that when the first Wonder Woman movie came out, it was like, holy crap, they give a damn. And they didn't. But for a minute, it seemed like
There's a little hope. There's a glimmer right there.
yeah, and I didn't like Ares in that movie, and that's a whole separate discussion. But Diana herself was characterized very well.
I have a question.
We don't talk about the sequel though.
What sequel? So,
Yeah.
I have a question. If you knew nothing about comics, would that impact how you felt about the DCEU rankings? I know that's
Maybe.
hard to say. Yeah.
Maybe, though I feel like with my tastes and sensibilities, I would like Shazam the most out of all of them anyway.
Fair. Because me personally, I always say I don't know. Sometimes I don't know how to say what the best is once it's because I do tier lists. I don't do pure rankings.
Yeah.
Because I feel like once you do pure rankings, at least for the way I think, you gotta split hairs and put certain things down too much.
Oh well, sure. How else would you differentiate?
Yeah, exactly. So I do tier lists, and for me, Wonder Woman and Shazam was always on the same tier. It seems like for you, Shazam's on the higher tier, so there's consistency there.
Yes,
But
I would say that Shazam is in a tier of its own for me.
okay, that's fair.
And then one step down from Shazam for me would be Wonder Woman and The Dark Knight. And The Dark Knight, I loved it. I really did. And Heath Ledger's Joker that's something that's never going to happen again. That was a flawless performance from an amazing character actor and made that movie. There's things about it that I'm not afraid to say. There's things about The Dark Knight that I have issues with. I have gripes with certain elements of that movie. I did not enjoy Aaron Eckhart as Two-Face. I didn't like whatever Maggie Gyllenhaal was doing during it. But like if I rewatch that movie and I tunnel vision myself into focusing just on Batman and the Joker, it's awesome.
Okay, that's fair. I don't know if I share that same opinion, but I get it. But I don't disagree at the same time. I just need to, before I lock on to that opinion, I need to put more thought into it.
Gotcha.
But,
So what I mean by that, like to be more specific, what I mean by that is Aaron Eckhart was serviceable. There was nothing like wrong with his performance per se. I'm not going to say he was a bad Two-Face, but there's actors I think would have been amazing Two-Faces, and to stack him up in the same movie with Ledger's Joker, again, contrasts. By contrast, what did he really do? Why was he there? What did he really add to the plot other than a device? Was there something about his characterization that made that movie better? Because I watched it again, asking myself that question, and I couldn't come up with anything. And Rachel, Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, is just the damsel in distress. Once more, just a plot element. Jonathan Crane, like Cillian Murphy's Scarecrow, I thought was more compelling than Rachel and Two-Face.
Oh yeah, I don't care about Rachel. I mean, I know I don't care about Rachel on the second one as much. I'm not sure how much I liked her in the first one.
Yeah, the first one.
That was Katie Holmes in the first one.
Right? Yeah.
So, Test Films from YouTube asks, "Who's your ideal Two-Face?"
So, I love when I love when an actor can pull off the portrayal of a cerebral villain, like
Mhm.
or like my favorite Batman villains are Hush and then Riddler. I love them, and I'm still waiting for someone to like really get Riddler right in film. I wasn't a fan of Paul Dano, but um, if I
Wait,
had,
wait. Before you don't let me forget. I want to get your opinion on the Batman when you're done this.
so if I had to pick an actor that I felt that I feel like really has the skill to pull off a character like Two Face, who is layered and a mastermind, and somebody who isn't just I'm angry at the world, so I'm going to do X, Y, Z, but somebody who really struggles with like the decision making and then the guilt complex between his dissociative personalities, I would have to go with like a Mads Mikkelsen. I think would be a really good Two Face.
Okay. I I can see that. I wouldn't have. I'm not good at casting. Uh, I'm the type of person like with test taking. If you give me multiple choice, I could do it, but I couldn't think of it on my own.
Or even and this one's a little outside the box, but what I'm basing this off of is the Seth Rogen Green Hornet movie. Christoph Waltz played the villain in that, and
I
he
love him.
killed it.
How do you feel about that
So
movie?
if he can, I forget if he can or he can't. I can't think of it off the top of my head. But if Christoph Waltz can do an American accent, him as Harvey Dent.
Oh, he does an American accent on Django. It's not a recent one, right?
No, you're right. You're right. I remember that now. Yeah, him as Harvey Dent.
But the thing is with Christoph is that he's classically trained. So my friend Ty, you'll meet him one day. He goes to school in Chicago he goes to acting school actually.
Oh,
He's
it's
getting
awesome.
his master's degree. You'll meet him. But he was saying how we're getting off topic, but it was so cool to me when he said it to me 2 weeks ago. Because we're not actors, when we think of accents, we hear it and we try to copy it. But we're not babies anymore, so we can't learn and hear unless you're a natural. Learning and hearing isn't the best way. He says that people like Christoph and all those people, they look at like your jaw. And I'm like, I would have never thought to do that. That's the craziest thing.
No, I hear you.
So
That's
just
like on one hand, wow. On the other hand, that makes sense. I can see that.
when you
Like
hear
now
it,
that
it
I
makes
think
sense.
about it.
I wouldn't have thought that on my own though.
Yeah.
So put it to make a long answer shorter, he can, even
Yeah.
though the accent in the 1800s is probably well, it's obviously different. The fact that he could even change his accent to anything American at all means he could change the time period.
And given Harvey's nature as a politician and somebody who's
Mhm.
bombastic and outgoing before he becomes Two Face, I would settle for like a transatlantic accent or something along those lines. It wouldn't need to be
Mhm.
anything like too heavy-handed. I would be much
Right.
more concerned with how well he was portrayed, and especially for a character with dissociative personality disorder, I need an actor who can swivel, who can convincingly, make that change. And I guess if I had it to round out a trinity of choices for somebody to play Two Face, um, going off of his performance, I can't remember the movie
Oh,
name.
I've
I'm
been
blank.
corrected. He's German on Django. Sorry about that for cutting you off.
You know what? You're right. You're right. He is.
But he's American in other roles. He was American in this one show on Amazon that turned off within 15 minutes. But he was American in it. It took place in like LA.
Gotcha. So the Glass Unbreakable, the second one with James McAvoy as the villain that had all the different personalities and
Yeah.
yeah, him.
J-
Based on that performance, and the name of the movie isn't coming to me right now, and it's because I have ADHD and I'm drawing a blank. But based on his performance in that film,
Mhm.
James McAvoy would round out my like 3 picks for Two Face.
He's good. But the
He
thing is,
is.
those Brits are really good at acting.
Yeah, they do tend to be.
Yeah.
Benedict Cumberbatch is a little bit talented or whatever.
It's funny because when you were saying that, I was thinking about how I always forget he's not American because
Yeah.
my introduction to him was Star Trek.
Yeah. Oh, and my hot my hot take about that is, so I'm not really a fan of the original Star Trek series.
Is it
And
because it's before your time? Because it's before my time for sure.
not even that. It's just really heavy-handed and clunky storytelling wise by today's standards. And if my little brother was here, he would argue with me about that till he was blue in the face. But I've always preferred Next Generation.
Well, but the Next Generation, isn't that technically more fine tuned for modern audiences
It
as
definitely
far
is.
as because I mean the first one came out in the 60s and TV was kind of TV in the 60s as you I don't know how to explain that any better, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I know exactly what you're trying to say, and yes, I agree that TOS was a product of its time, and I'm not knocking it. It's just not for me as much as Next
Mhm.
Gen was for me.
Yeah.
And not that there isn't things to love about TOS. I love Leonard Nimoy as Spock, and I love Uhura. Um,
And the impact it had on American culture as far as
oh, 100%. You think
the racial
you
and
be
the
doing any of this without Star Trek?
yeah, actually.
World would be looking a lot different.
Yeah, you're right.
But I always loved Picard more than Kirk, and there's a whole laundry list of other things. But those movies, that trilogy, the Chris Pine Star Trek movies, I really really loved.
Yo,
And
I'm telling you, we're cousins because I love those movies too.
they're
And
they were so good, and like it was so painful to me to be like a fan of those movies and then have all the Trekkies, the gatekeeper toxic ones be like, oh, these are trash. It's got to be the old ones or it's nothing. And
but they
um,
run parallel to the old ones.
they
They
do.
exist kind of because of the old ones.
They
Like I don't.
do, and then Into Darkness connects them directly when it brings in Leonard Nimoy's Spock, and it's like, oh, this is what you were going for. That's freaking awesome. But
Well, to be
um,
fair, he was.
I think the connection may have dropped. I uh,
To be fair, he was.
I heard to be fair, and then nothing after that.
Oh, he died in the third one.
Yes.
Okay, I got you now. I understand what you're saying now. I understand what you're saying. So,
So I really loved Benedict Cumberbatch's performance as Khan. To me, and I understand the criticisms. I do, like from people who grew up with Ricardo Montalban's portrayal of Khan, and like that's their thing.
in a way, this was a lot of ways a remake of Wrath of Khan, right?
It was,
Okay.
and I I thought that Benedict Cumberbatch brought a layer of nuance and compelling to that role.
Hmm.
That as good as Ricardo Montalban was, like there was another layer of depth
Hmm.
in Benedict Cumberbatch's performance that like really terrified me. Like I saw that movie in theaters and I was like, this dude's freaking horrifying. I love it.
I
And
know I'm with you. Like that part when he was cornering the I don't remember her name, but the blonde chick who was
Carol Marcus.
yes, and he was like, oh, threatening her. I was like, oh shoot, I think he about to like kill her.
It was scary. And to connect the dots for a bit there, you know, another character that does that to me is Hans Landa in Inglorious Bastards, Christoph Waltz. When I watched that movie, I'm like, this dude has me scared out of my mind. That
Yeah.
scene in that initial scene in the house in the field when he's come to find the people that are hiding in that house, and it's like the flashback scene where Shoshana is remembering
Hmm.
like that part of her childhood, and he's talking to the people, and he like knows that they're hiding the people under the floorboards, and it's just such a tense and skin crawling scene.
No, I'm with you. Sorry, I'm not. I'll be honest. I got a text literally in the middle of your
Oh
monologue.
no, no worries at all. I'll bring it full circle by saying
Mhm.
that Benedict Cumberbatch would be my pick to play Riddler.
Oh, see, that's the issue. I will have to see it, and I did. You know, I'm not me. I think you know how comic book movie Twitter is when they're like, oh, like why would they do that? Like, why are they just take MCU people? But it's like he's a really good actor. You're gonna
He's
see
a
him in
really
the
good
role, and you're
actor.
gonna forget that he was Doctor Strange in that
He's a
moment.
he's a really good actor, and I'm basing like my desire to see him play Edward Nygma on his largely on his performance as Alan Turing in the Enigma Machine.
I never watched that. It's about,
Oh, it's
I'll add
what
that to my list, like literally right now. Enigma
it,
machine. What's
it's
it called? What machine?
the Enigma Machine.
Okay.
Or oh
There's
no,
a,
I'm sorry, that was the let me double check here.
okay.
No, that I'm sorry, that was the name of the Dream Theater song that was written about it. They're one of my favorite bands. I had my wires crossed.
The Imitation Game.
The Imitation Game, that's what it was.
Okay. So okay. So we grinded DC to dust basically in a nice way.
I'll cap it off by saying that there's a really good quote about Marvel's approach versus DC's approach that I've always been a huge fan of, and I will use Superman. Well, no, let's go with the two most popular characters in the respective categories. I'll use Batman and Spider-Man as examples here. Marvel characters are human beings with godly powers who masquerade as gods in order to affect their worlds. And Peter Parker dresses up as Spider-Man and does as described. He uses his incredible powers to help people and affect his world for positive change. DC's characters are gods in the guise of humans who affect their worlds and then disguise themselves among the common folk. And Batman is not the secret identity. Batman is who he really is. Bruce Wayne is the secret identity.
Yes, I agree with that. I agree with that.
The difference in approach there is that Marvel characters are human first. DC's characters are human second.
That's true. Even on Smallville, they basically said the same thing with Clark. There's an episode literally about him doing that. They said, let Clark Kent be your disguise. Now, that doesn't translate to every version of him, but
no, it doesn't. And actually, I don't know if you've been seeing or seen My Adventures with Superman.
I love that show.
It's so freaking good. They really nailed the character there. Like that's it. That James Gunn, if you run across this, that's your framework, right? I mean, look, I know All-Star Superman, Grant Morrison, and yes.
I think he watched it and said, this is it. If I know anything about James Gunn, but like you said, we can't assume with him.
That show is so good, and it doesn't screw around. It doesn't waste time. It hits the ground running. It hits the plot points.
Every moment matters.
Yeah.
No waste of time.
Yeah, can't recommend that enough.
It gives me like a lot of Western animation. I feel the inspiration from anime. Like I get some Sailor Moon inspiration from that.
Oh, 100%. And that show in particular is very, very anime influenced to the point where every now and again I'll bring it up to somebody and they'll be like, "Oh, is that the Superman anime?" And I'm like, "Sort of." But even in the visual style, it reminded me of other anime inspired shows like Boondocks, and I thought that it fit in really well with like that programming block of Adult Swim. You know, the network that ran Afro Samurai, Boondocks, and so on and so forth. Like, yes, it makes sense for them to be producing and show running this.
Yeah, I mean, My Adventures is technically Adult Swim, right? That's not technically, it is Adult Swim.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Like that's their wheelhouse.
Yeah,
they nailed that. It's just that when WB gets involved with the movies, they get a little weird.
That's because when they're making a movie, there's a lot more money involved, and that's when boardroom executives involved, and that's when shit.
That's when they micromanage, and that's when they start to take the art out because they think they know what the art needs. But
they know what works. They know what works and what sells in a movie, but that's not.
They do, but sometimes they kind of don't because they don't realize the consumer is sometimes smart because some of these DC movies do flop.
So that absolutely, But even with like their knowledge of what worked in movies yesteryear and what made them millions and millions of dollars in the past, they're missing the mark connecting with audiences, not just because they're out of touch, but because they either don't want to or don't know how to portray the elements of these characters that we all grew up with and love for pre-existing reasons. We grew up with them and we love them. These dudes have no idea. They've only run across, if anything, loose frameworks of these characters, and they know how to loosely fill in the gaps between and then shove it out the door. And a great example of that is what Sony's doing with like Morbius and Kraven, right? They don't intend to give a damn about who these characters are. They were just given a list of bullet points by Marvel that they then handed to the production teams and were like, here, fill in the dots.
Yep. That's true. I mean, I don't even know how to add to that, but that's totally true.
They only know focus testing for sure.
Let me read that to the audience. The Spotify people. Test Films from YouTube said they only know focus testing. Yeah, that's true. Very true. And I feel like in the landscape of where, like, the audience is a lot smarter because we're having these conversations on RIP Twitter. People were having it there. They're having on Instagram. That's always in the algorithm. So the average fan well, maybe not the average fan, but people who are really into it, all they see when they open up Instagram, when they open up Facebook, they see things that are informing them. So they know what's considered bad. They know how to watch these movies and say, you know what? Aquaman 2 doesn't look like it's it. We could watch the trailer and be like, this looks like it's going to be a disaster.
Yeah. I have a lot of issues with DC's casting choices for the DCEU. One of the biggest ones for me was Jason Momoa as Arthur Curry. And I love Jason Momoa as an actor and as a human being. He's an awesome dude.
I get no Arthur Curry vibes from him.
No. And I'm not even talking about him not looking like how Arthur Curry has been traditionally portrayed, because whatever, that's not that doesn't really matter. It's that he doesn't act like Arthur Curry in any way, shape, or form. He should have been Lobo. He would have been a great natural fit for Lobo.
So much that they're about to ignore the fact that he's Aquaman and maybe make him Lobo.
Right. And cast Daniel Craig as Arthur Curry. He would have been perfect.
So I want to get back to the Superman thing because I feel like we bash DC enough.
Yeah.
So you also know a lot about animation. Give me a couple cartoons. You know, give me some current cartoons. When I say current, I mean like the non-classics, like something that came out in the past 8 years that you consider good. Let's do Western animation.
All right. Past 8 years. Well, we've already talked about my adventures with Superman. Kipo and the Age of
You can even give me 10 if you want. Like just something that you know is not like cartoon or old school Tsunami. So you don't gotta hard cap it, but just give me something that feels modern.
I'll give you a few. Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts was excellent on Netflix.
I have that on my watch list, but I didn't watch it yet.
So good. Over the Garden Wall. And I'll give you 2 more. Gravity Falls and Star versus the Forces of Evil.
Disney.
I'm sorry. I think it cut out. I did not hear what you just said.
Oh, okay. No, I said I'm not big on Disney Channel. I'm big on Disney content, but not Disney Channel. But Star and Gravity Falls, top tier. Yes.
And I'm generally with you. Like Disney Channel stuff is really hit or miss for me, especially DComs anymore. Their original movies, like I can pick out a handful from when I was growing up that I really love. You know, your Brinks and your Johnny Tsunamis and your Xenons and whatever. But lately, and I get that I'm no longer the target audience, but even that withstanding, lately they're just not my bag. But every once in a while, we'll get another Kim Possible in the form of Star versus the Forces of Evil. And then we get something like Gravity Falls, and it's like, this is amazing. Gravity Falls from a plot writing point of view, might be my favorite cartoon of the past 10 years.
Okay.
They managed to craft a compelling mystery with eldritch horror and like supernatural elements inside, wrapped up inside of like an otherwise like charming little country mess around in the woods adventure type show. And
Perfect setting.
the voice cast,
The voice cast.
is so good.
The
The
dialogue
the
is
dialogue,
awesome.
the character writing is it's hilarious, highly entertaining, endlessly memeable. When's the last time you've seen a Dipper Pines "Wow, this is useless" meme? Right?
Yeah.
And it's not just that. There's all sorts of them everywhere. But I can't say enough good things about that show and like what it did in the way of proving that we can still make great cartoons in the modern
Oh,
year.
it's funny that you say that because my last episode was my actor friend Ty saying that there's still great cartoons, but people don't realize you're not a kid, so you're not running to cartoons unless you know you're me and you. But
Yeah,
like, you're not running up to comedy cartoons or like classic cartoons. Action cartoons, adults watch those, but
yeah,
the kiddie looking cartoons, you're not running to that. So stop pretending that you actually know.
right.
Like, if you really think Powerpuff Girls, I'm just saying it because it's old. If you think Powerpuff Girls is the best cartoon, I'm fine with that. But if you're saying that just because it came out in '96 or whenever it came out, that's my issue. You're just saying it because that's when you were 5 years old. I don't like that.
So I agree with you on
Mhm.
that. What I will say to that specific, like the general sentiment, I agree with you. What I will
Mhm.
say to that specifically is that Powerpuff Girls is a damn good show.
That's why as I was saying it, I regretted it because if I was famous, they'd cut that up and make me look stupid.
I
Powerpuff Girls is awesome.
it's one of the best ever. I earlier before we went live, I gave you a list of like my 3 favorite cartoons ever made. Powerpuff Girls would be 4th.
Okay. I
Oh,
struggle with lists.
and speaking of Powerpuff Girls and Craig McCracken, another one I have to bring up, and I knew I was forgetting a big one,
Mhm.
is Kid Cosmic on Netflix.
Oh, I have that on my list too.
Craig McCracken did it.
I didn't know that.
It's incredible. Absolutely incredible show. Cannot recommend it enough. I'm not going to say anything else about it because I need anybody that takes me up on that recommendation to go into it blind. It's better that way. Trust me.
He said Derek's a hater, but Ed, and Eddie is my childhood goat.
Ed, Ed, and Eddie
So
is number 2 on my list.
it's funny because I don't remember
Number one,
what I
sorry, number
said
3.
to him, but I think I did that thing I used to do back in the day where I talked down on something maybe because I like something better, or that's how it's perceived. I don't remember. I really don't remember what he's referring to, but I'll be honest. Ed and Eddie wasn't high on my list, not because of quality. I just didn't prefer it. But now that I'm more into writing and film and like story, I get why it's a big deal.
And
I
yeah,
don't, but you know what? I'll be honest. I think a big part of it was the gumball and the animation. I think
so Ed,
my
Ed, and
bias
Eddie.
led into that. Yeah, go ahead. My bad.
Oh, I'm sorry. So Ed, Ed, and Eddie represented a couple of shifts
Mhm.
in paradigm for Western animation. It was the last show that Cartoon Network ever produced that was 100% traditional hand-drawn animation. And
Mhm.
obviously it has the art style that it has, and that's a hit or miss for some people. For me, it was a hit. I
Mhm.
love the way that the characters look and the animation having like shaky lines between frames or anything. That really only adds to the charm for me, but I understand how it could turn some people off. But
Crazy thing is, I was so young. I don't even think I knew that yet.
I do agree that the actual strength of that show and like the reason to keep watching beyond the witticisms and the dirty jokes layered inside of whatever Rolf is screaming at everybody else at the time is the plot and like character
Okay.
writing. It it represented a return to form for like the cartoon serial, where the only other shows at the time that were doing that were other stuff within the cartoon sphere. Dexter's Lab,
Mm.
Johnny Bravo, Courage the Cowardly Dog, Cow and Chicken, harkening back to cartoons of the 80s and yesteryear that would have their self-contained plots inside of episode to episode, but also like things happening in one episode having ramifications in another one later, and so on and so forth. And I thought that Ed, Ed, and Eddie's approach to it was very unique in that whereas with Powerpuff Girls, with Dexter's Lab, there was a lot more of a focus on the pizzazz and the shock value and everything of the bigger events and characters that would like be introduced and then stick around. With Ed and Eddie, the progression is more about how these kids grow and change and learn, because they're not like broad strokes. They keep the broad characterizations the same, but even before you get to the movie that wraps up the series, which
that came out recently,
incredible movie. No, it was like a direct-to-TV movie where they go and find Eddie's brother.
Oh, so it was to wrap up the series.
Yeah.
Okay.
So even before that movie, the little like subtle changes in the characters that are made, like as Kevin interacts with Naz more and Johnny and was it Susie? Was Susie Ed Single D's sister's name? I think.
Was there Susie in that show? The only Susie I remember is from Johnny Bravo.
You might be right.
Okay.
His
See, you know too much cartoon stuff, so it's all blending together for you.
Yeah,
Sarah. It was Sarah.
Sarah. Yes, it was Sarah. So as the kids all interact with each other and they all grow together, like there's a subtle shift and a subtle arc of them going from detached little kids to, you know, a neighborhood community, and it's really awesome to watch that.
I want to read this to the Spotify audience. That movie was back before kids cartoons regularly got finales.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only other big movie like series finale for a cartoon at that time that I can think of is Dexter's Lab got Ego Trip, and that was awesome too.
And then they brought it back and ruined it. I remember not knowing it was coming back, so I saw a new episode. I think I didn't have cable for a little bit, so I got cable again, and it was back. He was like even shorter than he was originally supposed to be, and it was just boring. Like I don't remember a single episode from the newer.
I don't like to talk about seasons 3 and 4 of Dexter's Lab.
Is that what that was?
Yeah.
It's funny how our lifespans were so short back then that you could have told me that was season 6, I would believe you.
Yeah.
Wow, but yeah, that was terrible. Like, and I feel like as a kid, especially the kind of people we ended up becoming, we knew what good and bad was at that time.
Yeah.
And the fact that I don't remember an episode, but I remember how it made me feel, is valid. Those seasons stunk.
Yes. And so, touching back on that list, I had said that Dexter's Lab is my favorite show ever, bar none. And it is, but I mean seasons 1, 2, and Ego Trip by that. And there's deeper reasons for that and why I've never found another show that I would think like it. And it inspired a lot of clones, you know, your Jimmy Neutrons and your Johnny Tests and whatever, but Dexter's Lab touched on something that the impact of Dexter's Lab can still be felt to this day.
Okay. I can see that.
Number 2, Invader Zim. Number 3, Ed, Edd n Eddy. Number 4, Powerpuff Girls. Number 5, Courage the Cowardly Dog. But
so in your heart, you're a cartoon guy.
Yeah. I would say that I am, and I'm really excited. As a quick side note, I'm really excited for the position that Cartoon Network is in right now, because and on the one hand, like I know people for a little while there were worried about the shakeups in WB's entertainment division, and
we talked about that last episode too, actually.
What it would mean for Cartoon Network and how that was going to land. But and this is the big but, and I freaked out when they announced this. I was so happy. They promoted Genndy Tartakovsky to
I heard about that.
something to the effect of overall creative director. Like he's now in full control of the entire library of Cartoon Network IPs, and holy shit!
So
like he
for
can
a
do
cartoon,
anything with those now.
he did Clone Wars, the OG one, right?
Yeah. So
So
he was Two Stupid Dogs, Dexter's Lab, Clone Wars, Samurai Jack. He storyboarded for Powerpuff Girls. He did Symbionic Titan. He's got 2 new shows going
Primal.
right now that I can't
Primal.
pull off the top of my head. He did Hotel Transylvania. The dude is a creative genius. He's one of my favorite creators in any medium ever. And for them to have just handed him the keys to the kingdom and then been like, "All right, you're the dude now." I can't wait to see what it allows him to do. We already have Toonami back, and I mean that's not due to him, but like that, it's an extension of the potential there. Like
I agree.
I can't wait to see the stuff that comes about as a result of him being in that position.
So segue to Nickelodeon a little bit. You said Invader Zim. That go now. This everything makes sense now. Because I was one of those kids who did double dip. I was Nicktoons and cartoon. Whereas I feel like back then it was like a war. You had to pick one. At least in my neighborhood. Now I understand because I feel like knowing your taste, I feel like Invader Zim feels more Cartoon Network than Nicktoon anyway.
Invader Zim, another one of my favorite creators, Yonan Vasquez. He was
I don't know him by name. I don't think I do.
He was a huge influence on me as an artist and as a creative. But yeah, that show changed my life. It changed what I came to expect to be possible from the medium of serialized animation. And one thing I found really funny / strange with Invader Zim in speaking to that versus cartoon and stuff. Invader Zim was canceled due to creative differences between Yonan Vasquez and Nickelodeon HQ, where they thought that Invader Zim was too dark. It was not kid friendly. And he was pushing for more and more of that stuff to be in Invader Zim. And they were like, no, this is too much. And they couldn't come to terms. And he walked. He just left the production and they were left with no choice but to shut it down. So that happened to that show. Meanwhile, Courage the Cowardly Dog went on for however many seasons and gave me actual nightmares. Invader Zim didn't scare me, but the Black Puddle Queen from Courage, oh my God.
And it's funny that you say that because so Invader Zim, that's what basically you can say it was over in 02, right? Just about.
Yeah.
Just for them, not that's the same, but just for them to let Avatar be itself 3 years later, it's hilarious because Avatar talks about genocide and like racism and stuff, basically.
Invader Zim lived and died so that other shows like Avatar could run full speed.
That's true. That's true when you put it that way. And do you remember the Avatar Invader Zim conversation we had?
Yes.
It's funny because now that conversation makes way more sense. And to the audience, you could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we had a conversation about what was more influential.
Yes.
And looking back, I'm not saying this just to be diplomatic, but looking back, from my perspective, it's oranges to apples. I think they're both influential, just in different ways.
They definitely are. And and my point was never that Avatar was not influential. I only felt that between the two, Invader Zim was more influential because not only because of the above, like what we just said, like within Nickelodeon, it changed what was possible because after it petered off and they got a bunch of angry letters and the Hot Topic merchandise was still selling like gangbusters, did they realize, oh, this is what people actually wanted and maybe we should have leaned into it instead of turning them away. But we got stuff like Gravity Falls because of Invader Zim. We got stuff like Star versus the Forces of Evil because of Invader Zim. Any like darker, grittier, deals with more real concepts in an absurdist way cartoon that you care to mention in the modern sphere would not be the way that it is without Invader Zim. And Avatar is also wildly influential in its narrative structure and its characters and the themes that it touches on, and how expertly all of that is woven together. And it influenced its own category of stuff. But Avatar drove that zeitgeist from a path that was already being followed down. It was the natural evolution of a deeper craving and yearning in audiences from stuff like Ed, Edd and Eddy and Dexter's Lab and as we touched on before, the animated serial. Invader Zim changed things on a dime, in a vacuum, where previously there was only stuff like a Rocko's Modern Life or an Real Monsters, like I hate to generalize and use the phrase like, oh, it was for the goth kids, but it was for the goth kids, and
it was. I'll give you that. It was.
It gave us a bunch more stuff that is for the goth kids, and I don't mean that detrimentally. I mean that
I agree. I'm with you.
I mean that it gives us a counterpoint, an alternative to like your Chowders and your Amazing Worlds of Gumballs and the Adventure Times and so on and so forth. And even Adventure Time, we wouldn't have a significant portion of what's in Adventure Time without Invader Zim.
So I have a question. As a kid or a teen, would you be put in the goth box? I only met you as an adult.
Partially. I was that, but always metalhead is what I would describe myself as.
Okay, makes sense. And being that I'm from West Philly, I wouldn't knew the difference. My friends wouldn't have. They were like, whatever, he likes rock and roll.
Yeah, right.
But it's funny because I was always going to say there's a lot of crossover between. Do you know where Blurred is?
Yes.
There's a lot of crossover between Blurs and like people who be put in the goth box. So that's interesting that we're on the same podcast together. So I think
100%. I agree with that.
Okay. So I think where we differ, I don't want to say differ, but where my experience molded my opinion with the Avatar thing was that I want to read this comment before I continue. A comment from YouTube said Avatar was a show where people said died, like the word died, during a time when you couldn't say die on their channel. And I guess to your point, that comes from Invader Zim. I wouldn't have looked at it that way, but now you say it, true. But
so I can actually draw a direct comparison there to that, to underscore that point. Think about, and this isn't really a test, right? This is just to evoke the thought first, and then I'll give the answer. But what would you say was the most popular show on television in like 2004, 2005, just before Avatar hit? And I mean animated cartoon.
2004, 2005. That's SpongeBob?
An argument could definitely be made for that. But I'm thinking more along the lines of like the teenage demographic that we were in at the time.
I can only... Okay, so maybe Test Film said it was an anime, maybe. You're talking about Western.
Yeah.
Stay Western? Okay,
so definitely anime influenced.
Teen Titans?
Yes. Now, why did they call Deathstroke Slade in Teen Titans?
You are smart because they couldn't say that on a kids' cartoon. First of all, like this is not your point, but first of all, I had the word death, and then second, it sounds like a sexual innuendo.
Yeah.
So in two ways, that's an L.
And he is, I guess, another full circle moment. He's my favorite DC character, and they still have yet to get him right in live action.
Okay, that I like the way you put that, but I do want to finish the Avatar point real quick.
Of course, I'm sorry I keep distracting.
No, you're good. No, that was good. I needed that. So Avatar, because opinions come from your worldview, obviously. So in my worldview, I'm looking at things like, I always say Western animation as far as fight choreography. It stems from two places. Avatar, like, you know, if you watch old superhero shows, not to say they weren't good, but just the idea of putting hands on each other and dodging, Spider-Man, like I'm talking about these are shows we love. Spider-Man, the Fox Kids one, the 90s one.
Oh, the 90s Spider-Man animated series. Oh, wow.
Awesome, but the fights weren't on par with what we see now.
No.
Partly
I
because
agree
of
with that.
politics and animation. Things were it was just it's just easier to animate now. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
And Super Friends, they tied people to a pole to subdue them. They didn't fight. So I say fighting in animation took off in Justice League Unlimited, maybe the OG Justice League, but definitely Unlimited and Avatar. So I'm looking at it through that lens, and in my mind, I'm like, I watched every cartoon that came on TV at that time. So I pinpointed the Avatar and Justice League Unlimited. Also, I'm watching all these newer cartoons that my friends who don't watch cartoons, they're like, "Oh, you still watch Voltron?" So I'm watching things like Voltron. I'm watching things like She-Ra. I'm watching
Voltron's one of my all-time favorites for sure.
the recent one.
No.
Oh,
Sorry.
watch that one. Okay. So let me clarify then. Let me clarify. The recent Voltron, there's a lot of Avatar influence.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. I didn't give credit to Teen Titans. That had great fight choreography for American cartoon.
There's one more that I want to add in there in that category, but first I want to interject by saying that I really wanted to love the new Voltron, and I did until the final season, and then it just fell apart drastically.
Okay, I can see that.
Samurai Jack as well.
Samurai Jack. I think it hit different for me because Samurai Jack, even Clone Wars, the fight choreography was great there.
And Samurai Jack had the added benefit of being influenced by like Kurosawa films.
That's true. In my head, I felt like Teen Titans, Clone Wars, Avatar, even Justice League. Did you ever see when Superman fought Darkseid and knocked into the building?
Oh yeah, dude. Oh,
that was Goku or Vegeta. I'll say
100%. One of my favorite quotes, like from Superman as a character ever, across anything, comes from that moment that you're talking about.
The one about letting loose.
Yeah, where he's facing down Darkseid and he's like these people on this planet. I always have to hold myself back and be extremely careful because it feels like everything's made out of paper, that I don't accidentally, I don't accidentally break anything here, but you. I don't have to hold anything back against you.
Because they evacuated the city, they're like, we are here to mix.
Oh my god.
Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, but back to the point of Invaders versus Avatar. It's not a real versus thing, but for the sake of conversation, I was looking through the lens of I see all these cartoons that I love that seem to be we're slightly based on an anime thing, and we also have real there's real world allegories to it. So I'm like, oh, that has to be Avatar. Like I'm watching Superman. My Adventures with Superman?
Yeah.
My Adventures with Superman. What's it called again?
My Adventures with Superman.
My Adventures with Superman. I'm like, oh, that's Voltron, which is, to me, that's Avatar. And then when I look, Laura Montgomery worked on Avatar. So she took the Avatar energy to those shows.
Yes.
So, and I'm watching Dragon Prince. Is that what it's called? Have you heard of the Dragon Prince?
I can't say that I have.
Okay, so it's a show on Netflix, and if you watched it for a couple seconds, maybe not the fights, but the dialogue, the banter, and we're going to venture across the land and get attacked randomly, that screams first season of Avatar. So, because I live in a world where Avatar is the show, all I see is Avatar. But you gave me a new perspective with the Invader Zim thing. Not that I didn't see it, but that's your thing. So you gave me pieces I never realized.
Yeah. And definitely, like, even with Western animation being a special interest of mine and my wheelhouse specifically, like even within that sphere, I would say that Invader Zim occupies a special pocket, a special place there where it's like, there was a point in my life where I could not physically learn enough things about that show and its production and the people that worked on it. And I really truly do feel that if that show had never come about, the entire landscape of Western animation would look vastly different today.
Okay, I can see that. So to close out the cartoon points, you gave me your top three, your top cartoons. Give me your top. What are your top three Nicktoons?
I will do a bonus here even and leave Invader Zim off of this list
Okay.
because that would be one for me. But
Okay.
I'm gonna go. Let me think because I've got two. I need to settle on a third.
Okay. Do you want to do mine so you can think?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Again, I suck at ranking things, so I'm doing this for the sake of conversation. It goes for me. It goes Avatar. I mean, I name myself after the guy. You can't say slang without ang. Two, SpongeBob. I know it feels cheap, but I liked SpongeBob before I cared about the cultural significance. I just loved season 2 of SpongeBob so much growing up. And three, I'll be honest, if I was younger, it would be Loud House. But that came out when I was like 26.
Loud House is so good.
It's so good. But if I'm talking about I'm not talking about best, I'm talking about like favorites. I think I'm gonna go Hey Arnold.
I'm also going to leave Avatar off of my list,
Okay.
just because, like, I too agree that it occupies this lofty space that it's up there regardless. But
Okay, fair.
For me, I will go with Hey Arnold,
That's a good one.
Angry Beavers,
Oh, that's a good one.
and Rocko's Modern Life.
Rocko's Modern Life is so you. Yes, that makes sense for you. I couldn't put that on my list. How old are you, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
I'm 34.
34. Okay. So maybe that little bit of difference had you remembering because I don't remember Rocko after first grade.
If you ever want a refresher, and for Invader Zim too, Netflix.
I actually watched Invader Zim, so I remember it a lot better.
Netflix has those two specials right now. One for and they're like film length.
You're
one
right.
For Zim, one for Rocko's Modern Life, and they're both incredible. And
you're right. I didn't watch the Rocko one though.
As a SpongeBob fan, you really owe it to yourself, I think, to watch Rocko's Modern Life because a lot of the not just the voice cast, although they were there too, but the production staff on SpongeBob, the show that like that group of people did before SpongeBob was Rocko's Modern Life.
Who played Rocko?
Rocko is Carlos Alazraqui, but
Okay.
Tom Kenny voices Heifer.
I know he was. I thought so. Okay, I thought so.
And Mr.
The neighbor.
The dude that voices Plankton, Mr.
You talk about the neighbor. I don't remember his name. Right?
Well, the guy that voices Plankton in SpongeBob is the voice of Sheldon in Rocko's Modern Life, the turtle.
Oh, the friend. Okay, the other best friend. Yeah.
Yeah, and his professional name is Mr. Something, but I forget.
Let me find out real quick. I'm on the Wikipedia right now. And it's the one time I can't find the casting. I see the critical reception before I see the casting. Wikipedia, you failed me. Oh, they don't have the casting on here.
I said his name's Sheldon. It probably isn't. I'm probably misremembering that.
I feel like it is Sheldon.
Filbert.
Oh, it's Filbert Shellback.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Lawrence. That's what it was.
Okay, I know that name. And he played Plankton?
He voices Plankton in SpongeBob.
Oh, okay. So a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. I'm looking at his filmography now. He's okay. He's also in Ren and Stimpy.
Yes.
Don't know what he did on there though. But okay. Well, I think we talked about Bud so I think video games will have to be next time.
That is A-okay.
Because I want to give things
and to be honest, you might be opening up Pandora's box a little bit there.
That's what I was about to say.
As much as I can talk about comics and
Mhm.
animation and movies and everything. Video games I can talk about endlessly.
Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like things like Final Fantasy and Super Mario RPG, I think it deserves its own time.
I
Like,
I'm A-okay with that, and by that point I'll have lost myself and then maybe found my way back out of Tekken 8. We'll see.
okay, okay. So quick, I'll give you quick hitter questions then. Um, best fighting game, best fighting game franchise.
Best fighting game franchise for me is Tekken. Best individual fighting game, Capcom versus SNK 2.
Okay, I agree with you with Tekken. I don't remember. I played the Capcom versus SNK before. I don't remember it well because it was that long ago
Um,
for me.
it would take me a whole info dump to get to the
Okay,
background of it, but
okay.
it to summarize, in my opinion, it's the platonic ideal of a 2D fighting game. The animation
Mhm.
was perfect. The character cast was enormous. The balancing was somewhat existent to the point where like it was still an enjoyable game at any level of play.
Mhm.
And you could do 1 versus 1, you could do team battles, 3 versus 3, you could
Mhm.
customize like power ratios to make a team of 3 versus a team of 2, or even just one dude that was as strong as 3 people. It had awesome arcade modes. It was one of the first games where you could like color edit your fighters and give them whatever color palette you wanted,
Oh.
customizable. And because it was Capcom and SNK, it had everybody from like Street Fighter,
Mhm.
Darkstalkers people, and King of Fighters, Fatal Fury, Samurai
Yeah.
Shodown, etc. It was just such
Okay.
an amazing game.
Okay. Second question. Favorite Smash Brothers character, like to use.
To use Sephiroth.
Like, okay. Is that because of the game or like the Final Fantasy series, or he just happens to be a
Both.
good character for you?
Both. He's my favorite character from anything ever.
Okay.
And when that trailer dropped for Ultimate, I lost my mind. I was in tears at it. And then it just so happened
Mhm.
that like I would have used him if he sucked. I would have used him if he was the worst character in the game.
Okay.
It just so happens that he both fit my play style really
Mhm.
well and he was really freaking good. Like as
It's
far as like a tier list placement in the game goes, he's awesome.
it's
And
crazy
I had a
how
blast with
oh
him
my
every
bad.
time.
I was just gonna say it's crazy how there's so many characters in that game. Like the play style, you gotta be picky with it.
Yeah.
I'm a Marth guy now. I used to be a Link guy when you met me.
I love Marth. And if you got Ultimate, we should play because I'm
Yeah, I
already down.
mean, I don't think I'm any good anymore but I'll definitely play. Like,
I'm out of practice myself, so we'll see how that goes. But
okay,
like, for example, the character that came right after Sephiroth, Kazuya,
mhm,
Tekken. I love Tekken, and I love Kazuya as a character.
yeah,
I use Kazuya really well in Tekken. There's
mhm,
some disconnect there with Smash Brothers where like I can use him sort of well, but not at the level that you would need to like be competitive with him. He
right,
doesn't fit my playstyle in Smash.
okay,
Sephiroth does,
fair,
and I'll give an honorable mention to King K. Rool, who he fits my play style well enough, despite not being like a really good character in the competitive sphere. He
mhm,
fits my play style well enough that I got into Elite Smash with him on accident. I was just bored one night and doing random online matches, and
mhm.
after like an hour, it was like you're in Elite Smash, and I was like, what?
Okay, okay. Another question: are you jumping into the Power World hype?
Yeah. So I have yet to get the game myself. That's like 2 days from now. I'm going to jump on that finally, but
Mhm,
um I'm both excited for it because I'm angry at Game
mhm,
Freak and the Pokemon Company and have been for some time, and they need competition. And I'm not on board with the angry would-be whistleblowers who are like, "Oh, look at all the designs it stole." My brother in Christ, look at all the designs that Pokemon stole. Look at how much everything steals from everything, especially in a creature collecting game. You're looking for originality? I got bad news.
okay, okay, okay. Second question: I was gonna say Sony or Xbox, but anyone with eyes can see that you have a PS5. Did you get
Yeah,
the PS5 when it was hard to get, or did you get it when it got easier to get?
I did get it when it was hard to get, and I didn't
Okay,
want to. I didn't want to
okay,
try. I uh I said to myself, "Self, you don't need it. It's all good. Just wait. Just sit on it and wait until they're widely available.
Well, that took 2 years, so maybe you did the right
don't
thing.
run head first up a waterfall. It'll be worth it waiting. And then they announced Final Fantasy VII Intergrade would be
Okay.
if Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade would be PS5 exclusive, and I said, I hate you guys. Now I got to get one. And the way I accomplished it was Walmart's website. They were the only ones at the time with any.
I heard they're the easiest ones to if you want any kind of luck.
They were the only ones with any type of anti-scalper measure. And what it was they let you save items in a cart to, like, if something sold out, in this case, that you could save your cart for next time. And like it would cut out half of the checkout process. So you make an account and you go in the first time and do a PS5 order, and there's no way you'll be able to order one directly from that, but you save your cart for next time. And then next time a drop comes, and I was following people online who would get advance info of when they would drop, so I'd be ready. You go on their website, you load your saved cart, and then you just go directly to the payment info step, and you're good. And it took me like 2 tries after having preloaded the cart like that, but it went through eventually, and it was good.
Okay. Second question: will you ever buy into the Game Pass hype?
I don't. So I have nothing against Xbox, not from a conceptual standpoint. I have an Xbox 360. Actually, I have 2. One I got from a friend when I was living in Texas, and Microsoft was running their buy a certain laptop and get a free Xbox 360 Elite.
When did that happen?
Yeah, so he went away to college, and he had to get a new laptop for college, so he got that laptop, and he got a free 360 Elite. He turns around and sells me his like base model 360 with 2 controllers and everything for $60. I was like, why would I not do that? So I got that. And then sometime later, an ex-roommate of mine who was working demolition jobs at the time found a 360 Elite in a house he was demoing and just gave it to me. So I have those. But at this point in my life, I don't actually need an Xbox because of the PC that I built. Any Microsoft exclusives I can just play here.
Fair. Okay. Well, that answers that. Okay. We did favorite DC character.
Deathstroke.
And you said that already. Okay, give me the favorite hero.
That's what I was going to say was if we're leaving aside Deathstroke in the villains category, hero, I'm going to go with Vic Sage, the Question.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
He's an amazing character, and not too many people are even aware of him anymore. If you're looking for a great read, I recommend The Question Volume 1 from the early 90s. It had Batman in it too as like a crossover character occasionally, but such a great like noir crime thriller series. I like
the sound of that.
Rorschach in Watchmen was based directly on The Question when he was still a Charlton Comics character before DC acquired that company. And in terms of like the grit and the violence and everything, Question is Rorschach, but without like the dangerous paranoia.
I don't know how they made that connection, but I don't know maybe I subconsciously did, but you're right. Yeah, I see it. Okay, so non-comic book wise, or are you watching anything live action that's not the comic book?
I just watched The Bear.
Awesome show.
A few months ago. Oh my god, that show! Do
you relate to it at all?
Do what?
Do you relate to it at all?
Yeah. Well, so I mean, I've worked in the food industry and I can relate to it on that level. But more than that, I really wasn't ready for season 2 and how dynamics shifted drastically from the end of season 1. The episode where he sends Richie off to work in that restaurant.
That's one of the best episodes of TV I've ever seen in my life.
It made Richie my favorite character in that entire show. And I can't describe like the metamorphosis of emotions I went through watching that episode. It's Richie specifically that I relate to most as a character. And that episode did so much for that and so much for him. And the other episode that I have to mention from season 2 is the Christmas episode with the fork.
That's the crazy thing about that is how many times can a show, like, usually in TV, you could tell they put everything into one episode to be the not Oscar. What do you call it when you win the TV award? The Emmy.
Emmys.
The Emmy episode.
Yeah.
They have 2 Emmy-worthy episodes. And
Yeah,
not that I
sure.
base everything on that, but just for the conversation. Like, both of those episodes are classic.
Yes, they're flawlessly executed.
Mhm.
And this is by this point an older show, but I still want to shout it out because I'm very excited for the final season, and it will be the reason I briefly renew my Netflix subscription. Cobra Kai is my favorite live action show ever made.
That show is so good.
It's way better than it ever had any right to be or ever needed to be.
That could have been an epic failure.
It could have been. It should have been.
It should have been an epic failure.
I love the Karate Kid movies. Like the first one's a perfect movie. The second one's very good. The third one is so bad that it's good. But like I wasn't ready for them to take that source material and tangent it into something correctly modernized for today's audiences while remaining compelling to fans and people that had like me and like you who had grown up with the original movies. I don't have a bad thing to say about Cobra Kai. It's just good. It's just compelling. And the stuff that happens in that show, I can't look away. And it's not like a train wreck effect. Like, oh my God, look at all this shit happening. I can't look away. No, it's like, I got to know what happens next.
I can't like watch that show in pieces. I got to binge it. I have to binge it. Like the fact that it's a great blend of, it's like when it comes to the whole perspective thing, like, oh, I see how both guys got to that conclusion.
Yeah.
Like the nuance in it. Yeah. The character nuance, the fact that Johnny Lawrence has his perspective on how he was wrong. And Daniel's like, no, I was new and I was bullied. And then the way they included the kids, the fact that they could not fight for 3 episodes and it works well as a teen drama, as a young adult drama, as a adult drama. It just works so well.
Yes. Oh, it really does. It works on every level, and there's not a whole lot of shows out there that I can say that for.
Yeah, but yeah, I think this is a good place to end it because as I just learned, well, I knew, but seeing it in person, we could talk about anything for hours.
Yeah, and I look forward to doing that.
Yeah, just let me know when you're free. We gotta get food together soon.
Would love to.
I'm free this weekend. If you're free, I'm free every day around this time.
I got something Sunday, but I will keep you posted. I don't think I have anything Saturday.
Saturday I'm free anytime after 4:30. So hit me up, or I'll hit you up.
Sounds good, dude.
All right, thank you for doing this.
Of course.
In post production, I'll plug your Instagram. Y'all gonna see us together way more. We're going to what's Comic-Con? The one we want to go to.
Fan Expo is in May, so that's the evolution of Wizard World.
Oh, okay.
And
I'll date for that.
A convention that 2 conventions that I really want to plug here too. Mm-hmm. Both of them upcoming. One is in June, and it's my favorite convention, like local convention in this area. It's called Too Many Games, and it happens at the Oaks Expo Center, and it's been growing exponentially. I feel like they're going to outgrow that space soon, but it's like a miniature MagFest. They have concerts. They have a ton of free-to-play games, not just arcade machines, but like tournament setups and stuff, Smash, fighting games, whatever you want, racing games, rhythm games, and just so many awesome vendors there. There's like a whole aftermarket game market there, and you can find all sorts of rare collectibles like 90s Final Fantasy and Metal Gear Solid figures, people that make art. Like I got a Perler bead Gino from Mario RPG there this past year. And amiibos. If you're ever hunting for amiibos, that's the place to get them. Like you can get them loose for really reasonable prices there. I can't recommend it enough. It's always an amazing time. And the other one is RetroCon, which is going to be in September. it's 80s themed. Think like Transformers, Ghostbusters, A-Team, anything like that. You mentioned Voltron, Thundercats, Masters of the Universe, She-Ra, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. If it's from the 80s, you can find it there. And even the early 90s, they got a whole huge Power Rangers presence too.
You don't say.
I do say.
You threatened me with a good time.
I like that.
Okay, so I'm putting these on my calendar because I mean now I'm a nerd podcaster. I gotta go to these things, and I mean honestly, I would go if there's no one watching. So all right, I think this is a good place to stop. I will definitely text you about these. Like I'm going to all of these.
Sounds good.
All right, well, thank you for coming through. I'm going to plug your Instagram in too. That's okay with you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All right, well, we'll do this again soon. I'll hit you up. Thank you. This is the Avatar Slang Podcast. Thank you for watching. And this will be on all, what do you call it? All places where you can get your podcast at. So it'll be on Spotify, iTunes. Is it even called iTunes these days?
Maybe.
Apple Podcasts, whatever. Y'all get what I'm saying. Anywhere you can listen to a podcast, it'll be on there. All right, I'm logging out.